Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks with an update on the current situation in Spain. Day 100, that's right, we've made it to the 100 mark. Time for some celebrations. Let's get some sound effects in there. And there we go, that is it, day 100, I made it to the ton. Firstly, a big thanks to all of the people that left comments on the last video. Lots of comments, lots of debate. Thanks to all of the people that supported the channel through a small donation. You can see your name here. Big thanks to people that bought merchandise, and a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon for your support. Now, let's get into some of the things that have caught my attention over the last couple of days. And it is that the state of alarm ended yesterday and Spain moved into the new normal, or as some people are calling it, the new abnormal. Now let's have a look at some of the news that caught my attention, and we can see here that visitors returned to Spain as the virus state of emergency ended. The Spanish government has launched a publicity campaign to boost the vital tourism industry. Overseas visitors have begun arriving in Spain once more as the country reopens its borders and the 3-month state of emergency declared in response to the virus pandemic comes to an end. As the second most visited country in the world, Spain is desperate to reactivate its vital tourism sector as soon as possible. The government has launched a publicity campaign called Spain for Sure in an effort to reassure visitors and fire up the industry, which makes up about 12% of the country's GDP. So Spain desperate to reactivate the tourism industry and launching a campaign showing people that it's safe to visit the country and that Spain should be on your list of destinations over the summer months. And the big question, of course, is will people come to Spain this summer? Has the government done enough to convince people that Spain is a safe country to visit? We'll wait and see. Now, some good news if you're in the UK and planning to come to Spain, and it is that there will be no quarantine for you when you come to the country. However, there will be one when you go back, unless that's lifted in the near future. And we can see here that the Foreign Minister has confirmed to the BBC that there will be no reciprocal requirement for 2-week isolation, just hours before the Spanish border was due to reopen to the European Union and Schengen area travellers. So good news if you're from the UK planning to come to Benidorm, Magaluf, Fuengirola, or one of those popular UK destinations here in Spain. No quarantine rules for you. So hopefully that will encourage a few more people to make the trip down here this summer. Now, one of the big things people were waiting to see yesterday when the state of alarm ended and people could finally travel again throughout Spain was how many people would take to the roads. And we can see here that there has been no mass exodus of Madrid residents with the new normal, no traffic jams. There was smooth traffic, few flights, and tranquility on the border with France on the first day of the new normal. So obviously people taking it easy, not deciding to hop in the car straight away, and listening to the advice of health experts who don't recommend traveling to other areas unless it's absolutely necessary. However, come July the 1st, when the traditional holiday season starts, I'm sure that there's going to be a mass exodus of people from this city. But of course, probably less than other years, given the situation and given the circumstances. Now, of course, with the state of alarm coming to end, it also meant that the government had to give back power to the autonomous communities. During that state of alarm period, everything in Spain was controlled from Madrid, and one newspaper was a little bit critical of the all-powerful role of the Prime Minister during the pandemic, and we can see here the 100 days in which Pedro Sánchez was Caesar. The Prime Minister who caged the Spanish for their failure to prevent the pandemic has constructed a triumphant account. After patriotic and warlike language, he took advantage of the state of alarm to strengthen his power and try to silence criticism. Now remember that there are a lot of people that were critical about the state of alarm, the length of the state of alarm in particular, and the powers that the government did get during the state of alarm. Were they constitutional? The government seems to think that they were. The opposition seems to think that it wasn't. And of course they were ruling by decree for those 100 days, much to the chagrin of the opposition and people that are not government supporters here in Spain. But we'll see how this pans out over the next few months, whether those measures were indeed legal or not. Now the Prime Minister also came out yesterday in what he called his last weekly speech. Remember, he has been giving updates over the course of the last 3 months. Yesterday was his last apparently for a while because of course politicians are now on holiday, so everything has worked out perfectly for them. And he said that the virus could return and plunge us into a second wave. We all have to avoid that at all costs. Prime Minister Sánchez went on to say that he wanted to take stock of the situation, attributing the state of alarm, a measure he described as fully constitutional, to halting infections. We have benefited all of the regions, he said, adding that by some estimations as many as 450,000 lives have been saved across the country thanks to the lockdown. So as we can see, the Prime Minister giving himself a nice pat on the back for his work during the pandemic. A lot of people, of course, think that Spain did do a good job. A lot of people think that they didn't. Some people, of course, think that they reacted too late. But again, in hindsight, it's very easy to take decisions. But we'll see over the next few months what happens from a health point of view. Now, some bad news regarding the economy, and it is that one particular autonomous government here in Spain, the one in Catalonia, estimates that 30% of Catalan businesses will not reopen. And there is a feeling around the rest of the country that there's going to be similar numbers in other regions as well, up to 1 in 3 businesses not reopening as a result of the pandemic and the lockdown, which of course has basically destroyed the economy. And another piece of news here says that half of Spanish workers fear going into unemployment. Concern remains that de-escalation is not accompanied by economic recovery. The main issue is work. If unemployment in Spain is an endemic problem and the main concern of citizens in a normal situation, with the coronavirus crisis, the alarm has been triggered. The general data from the survey indicates that 41.9% of Spaniards fear going into unemployment, but the percentage exceeds 50% if only those who are actually working at the moment are taken into account. And of course, unemployment for me is one of my main concerns. Will there be enough jobs around in the future? As that article says, the problem of unemployment in this country is a serious and endemic problem. And of course, previous governments haven't been able to create jobs. And with the amount of jobs destroyed during this crisis, are they going to be able to create more jobs in the future? And how many more people are going to lose their jobs over the next coming months? That's the question. Now, an important piece of news if you are thinking of coming to Spain this summer, and it is that Spain has sanitary capacity for its population and also for tourists. Now, one of the big problems that we had here in Spain, and of course in other countries around the world, is that there wasn't enough hospital beds available during the height of the pandemic. But according to the government, that situation is under control. And if people do decide to come to the country, there is going to be capacity for them as well as for locals. And of course, this comes on the back of a huge scandal here in Spain at the moment, in which elderly people were refused entry into hospitals during the height of the pandemic. We can see here that from the Canary Islands to Castilla y Leon, autonomies that limited the hospitalization of the elderly. And in one video leaked to the press, a doctor was shown saying that we are going to deny a hospital bed to patients who have the highest risk of dying. A video of a clinical session at the Parla Hospital in Madrid reveals that the Madrid community health system was prepared to exclude sick elderly people. So there we go. Allegedly, during the height of the crisis, elderly patients were refused entry into hospitals on orders from politicians who told hospital staff to refuse access to people at most risk of dying. So there we go, a universal health service for all, except during the height of a pandemic. And obviously a terrible situation where hospitals have to choose who gets a bed and who doesn't. And unfortunately, a lot of elderly people were denied access to hospitals. Now let's have a look at some of the comments from the last video. One here from Kerry: Spain, Portugal, France and other EU nations don't really want British holidaymakers, but they want the British pounds. If you fly out, you're probably going to bring back the virus, stay and spend your money and put the British economy first. Yeah, thanks for the direct comment there, Kerry. Is that how you feel? That countries in Europe don't want British holidaymakers? Seems a bit sad to me, but they do want your money. Well, I suppose both go hand in hand at the end of the day. And I'm sure that there are lots of people that are planning to stay in the UK and holiday there this year and spend their money locally. As for coming here and catching the virus, of course, that's a risk, but I think there's obviously a huge risk of catching it if you stay at home as well, so be careful. One here from Julie: Hi Stuart, we live in the Valencia region of Spain and have been here for just over 2 years. We have listened regularly to your updates and have found them to be very informative. We also like to hear your comments and views, having been a resident for many years. We love the life here and are steadily learning the language and have many friends who are locals that make it easier to learn. We totally agree the way of life is enriched by being integrated into the local community and supporting local businesses. We feel that it's even more important now as every euro will count. We are starting to see some normality return to our town, Ontinyent, and its pavement starting to buzz with life again. Thanks for all your reports. We appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for the comment, Julie, and good to see that you are integrating into life here in Spain and, of course, learning the language and making friends which is fundamental. And I understand that it is difficult for people. You come to these places and there are big British expat colonies. You don't really need to learn the language, but in my experience, it's fundamental, as I said in previous videos, in order to understand the way of life here, to get things done, you need to have that local inside knowledge, which is very, very difficult to get if you don't speak the language. And Julie, it is good to see that there is some life slowly starting to return to your town, Ontinyent, and that the pavements are starting to buzz again, which is what we want to see, right? One here from Neil. Hi Stuart, you mentioned a 3-point check at airports and ports. Were you going to be driving through France from the UK? Do you know what is happening at the border on the roads? Yeah, Neil, thanks for the comment. As far as I know, the checks are only at ports and airports. If you drive into Spain from France, for example, or from Portugal when those borders open again, there aren't going to be controls there because obviously it's more difficult to do. Easier to control people at a port or an airport than it is on the roads. So I don't think you're going to have any problems crossing a land border coming into Spain with regard to the 3-point check. But if I find out anything different, I'll let you know. One here from Michael. Hi Stuart, friend just arrived on first flight from Manchester into Alicante. No checks at either airport. Middle seat on airplane used. No masks for some people, money before health, lockdown soon. Yeah, thanks for the comment, Michael. Obviously, it's going to be one of the big challenges to get everybody wearing masks. We can see here that police are handing out fines for people that are not wearing them. And the images that I've seen of some planes is that they are full and there's people sitting in every seat, so there's no social distancing going on there. Regarding the checks at the airport, as far as I know, they haven't got them set up at every airport yet. Only the main ones at the moment, only the big airports, so probably only the one here in Madrid, the one in Barcelona, maybe Palma de Mallorca, maybe Malaga, but smaller airports might not have them in place yet, but they will be up and running in the next few days, I imagine, as the government hires and prepares more staff, and they're in the process of doing that at the moment. One here from Ron. Very much appreciate your update, Stuart. I heard you say you are self-employed. How do you make a living in Spain? Like Del Boy says, this time next year, you'll be a millionaire. I wish, eh? Yeah, Ron, thanks for the comment. Obviously referring there to Del Boy from Only Fools and Horses, that classic British comedy from the 70s and 80s, I think. How do I make a living in Spain? Well, up until now, I've been teaching English, but that work seems to be slowly dropping off as people are not spending money due to the state of the alarm, and of course, companies have cut back. We'll see in September whether that starts to pick up again. I hope it does. And over the years, apart from teaching, I've done a little bit of translation work. In recent times, these videos give me a little bit of money as well. Not a lot, but it's better than nothing. And of course, in the future, if work starts to dry up, I'll have to look for other ways to make a crust. So if you've got any ideas, let me know. One here from Patricia. Stuart, you would be good at teaching Spanish. I've tried to learn, but I keep having to rewind BBC Mi Vida Loca, as it's fast, though it's good to learn from real Spanish people. Have you ever considered this? Thanks for the comment, Patricia. And yes, I have thought about doing this. Somebody suggested it a couple of months ago, and I am going to set something up. I am going to start to share my knowledge of Spanish with people that are interested, my 20 plus years of learning the language. I'm going to try to package it up, get it out there somehow, and help people like yourself, Patricia, improve your Spanish language skills. So stay tuned. One here from Stacy. I made a trip down to Marbella yesterday to take an elderly relative for a medical appointment. I was very shocked that in the busy city centre, many of the measures in place were not being followed. As many as 20% of people were not wearing masks, mostly men of all age groups, but also some younger women. Distancing measures are very difficult to achieve on busy sidewalks. It's near to impossible to ensure the 2-metre separation. In fact, it's difficult to maintain a 1-metre separation. Shops and cafeterias were generally good, but I did see staff in some shops not wearing masks and in close proximity to customers. I can only imagine the rules are not being strictly enforced in the city centre. Marbella has a low case rate at the moment, but I would not be surprised to see an increase, as has happened this week in Algeciras. Yeah, Stacey, thanks for the comment, and it is a bit of a characteristic at the moment. Spanish people love to be outdoors. Spanish people love to be in the street. That is one of the main hobbies of people here. And of course, very difficult to maintain social distancing. I went out Saturday evening and I have never seen so many people in the streets as I did on that particular occasion. Probably about 75% of people were wearing masks. But of course, when you're outdoors, you don't have to wear a mask unless you can't maintain that distance. But as you said, very difficult in some Spanish cities. The restaurant that I went to, all of the wait staff were wearing masks and there was no problem there. So I think in general, the majority are following the the rules, but again, very, very difficult to maintain as the weather starts to get hotter and hotter, which it's doing now. One here from Andrew, making friends in Spain. This came up in other videos before the quarantine. Getting to know the local neighbors is not easy in any country, especially in big cities, and especially if you don't speak the language, at the very least B1 or B2 level. Maybe it's better down in the south, but in Madrid, everyone is busy with their own lives and won't give you a moment in the day unless there is some benefit, direct or indirect. It is how it is, I guess. Yeah, thanks for the comment. It is difficult in big cities. Madrid in particular is one of those cities where people don't have time for anything. People go about their day-to-day very, very rushed, similar to Paris, similar to London, similar to Melbourne, similar to Sydney, similar to any big city around the world. And it is difficult to make friends in a city like Madrid. And in particular here, I find people are very cliquey. A lot of Spanish people have friends that they made at school, university, work, and it's not easy to break into those groups. A lot of the Spanish friends that I have are neighbors, people that we've got to know over the years because of my son's sporting activities, school friends and things like that. And of course my girlfriend's group of friends, which she's had since she was about 13 or 14, are the main people that we hang around with here. So I do agree it's not easy and you do have to make a bit of an effort to meet local people. And finally one here from Sanjukta. I love Spain and I'm from Denmark. However, most of the people I know here who have money will be traveling locally as they distrust whether they could get stuck in a foreign country if the infection spreads again. Yeah, thanks for the comment, and I'm sure it is one of the main things people have in the back of their minds at the moment. Do we come to Spain? Are we going to be at risk? Is it going to be safe? Those are the questions people are asking. Do you want to get stuck in a foreign country should something happen? I don't know. A lot of people will be contemplating this. Could be a bit of an issue, and I'm sure that lots of people are going to stay home precisely for that reason. Now on that note, I'll start to wrap the video up. Number 100. Thank you very much for all your support over the last 100 days. It's been fantastic and I appreciate it greatly. Questions or comments on this video, please leave them in the section below. Debate the situation out as you normally do. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. Give it a thumbs down if you didn't. I'll see you in the next one. Hasta luego.